You know the old saying, actions speak louder than words? Well, that's the best way to summarize this episode. But if there is one thing that always annoyed me about that phrase, actions speak louder than words, is the fact that not many pieces of literature can properly implement that. Because sometimes when you hear the phrase, action speaks louder than words, sometimes it's because certain writers or whatever are a little bit lazy. They don't want to explain anything, or sometimes things get too crazy and the reader or watcher can't really comprehend what's going on, and there does need to sometimes be some details explained. And so the phrase action speaks louder than words, it is appropriate, but at the same time, sometimes it needs proper setup for it to actually work. In this case, it works out perfectly because of all of the prior setup for this very episode. For instance, Soya. Soya is a character that is like an enigma. He is a character that we have known for a while now, since Season 1. And every time we've seen him, he seemed like some form of mythical, godlike being that nobody was even close to. He seemed like someone that nobody could ever touch. No one could ever be up near, because he was just this idol, this big pillar that stands on top of the world of shogi. No one will ever be his equal. That's what everybody always viewed him like. And even Rei himself always looked at him like he was this big symbol, this godlike being, or demon-like being. That's what some think as well. But in fact, when you get some scenes throughout this episode, we get some more understanding to his character. As we all know, he's always been this character that seemed very quiet. Someone that doesn't seem to properly communicate with others. He doesn't talk with others. He keeps to himself. He doesn't seem to laugh, smile. He doesn't even seem to have many friends. And when you look at all of these scenes, it looks like the writer is trying to imply that Rei and Soya are very similar, which you should have gotten a very long time ago in Season 1. This episode is basically confirming that. Confirming the fact that Soya does seem to be isolated. Very isolated from anyone else. Very similar to how Rei was earlier on. And how he finally has, found his way. And found a way to with, Hina and her family and all of that, the sisters, and is able to properly communicate with others, actually have bonds with people. That has changed him tremendously. And it seems like Rei's character right now, what he's went through, might prove to be like a guidepost for Soya in the future of this arc. That's what I'm assuming, because Soya, he seems to have his own issues. Even the man that's on top, the master of shogi, seems to have his own personal issues that he needs to overcome. In this case, it's very apparent from the way this episode is depicting, Soya, that he has hearing issues, which would explain a lot. And I don't know if he really does have hearing issues, because it's not clarified. I mean, there's two ways you can interpret a certain scene, how hearing or words no longer reach him. You can interpret it as he's such a godlike being, he's this mythical being, basically, at the world of, or in the world of shogi, that just nothing matters to him anymore. The only thing he cares about, or only thing he wants to talk about, is shogi, and so that's why he's very silent. Or another way you can interpret that line is that he is, near deaf, and he can't hear anyone, and so, yeah, he has bad hearing. So I feel like that's kind of what the episode is trying to show, and like I said, I didn't clarify it, but I feel like it most likely is him having hearing issues, because when you see the scene on the train, it makes a lot of sense. Kiriyama, Rei, he walks up to the man yelling his name like, hey, and all that, and it doesn't seem like he even notices. Even the announcement that was going on in the train, he didn't even notice. And when Rei put his hand on him, he jumped, and he looked at Rei like in a startle and confusion, and it didn't look like he was really that tired. It didn't look like he was like zoned out really sleepy, just like he was very confused. And when he looked at Rei, didn't say any words, and when he looked outside and he saw it raining and they weren't moving, it all comes together. That he apparently has some problems with hearing. We don't know if he can somewhat hear. He might need a hearing aid. Maybe he doesn't have it. Maybe he doesn't wear it because of how probably people would feel about him. I have no idea. But at the very least, though, he does appear to have some hearing trouble. And this grounds this mythical godlike being back to the, regular plane of existence. He is no longer someone that can't be touched. But at the same time, Rei realizes that he's still crazy at shogi, but he is someone that does need to be cared for, taken care of. And you see how he interacts with him in the later half of the episode. Every time, he turns around, he notices that Soya stops moving, and Soya looks at him, which this most likely could be like him paying attention to whatever Rei is doing, because since he can't hear anything, he has to focus on Rei to figure out, what he needs to do next, how he can possibly communicate back. I mean, for what all we know, there is a likely possibility that maybe he's very self-conscious about his hearing issue, and that he doesn't tell anyone. That could be a thing. Maybe, not many people really know, and he's just, keeping it to himself. I mean, we obviously saw him speak in this episode, so he can speak, but that's just a bunch of things. I mean, that also may be because he lost his hearing recently, or maybe, he needs a hearing aid or something. I don't know, but I mean, when you see the scene, it makes a lot more sense now. And it explains why he's so good at shogi, because shogi, in a lot of ways, from what I've been seeing from the season, even though I'm not a master at shogi, I don't claim to be, I'm not someone that can even play shogi, I have noticed throughout the journey of this series, and March comes in like a lion, that the only way to really beat your opponent is by analyzing them and understanding who they are and how they play. And in this case, someone that has, not good of hearing, they probably would have to get used to analyzing people, analyzing their body movements, how they move, how they, move their face around or whatever, however they act. He's gotten used to doing that, and that could explain why he's so good at shogi, because he's good at analyzing people, which would also explain why he was stopping every time, Rei was stopping, because he was paying attention to whatever he was doing. And also the one scene to when he was able to communicate with Rei, and he said one line basically, like, yeah, it makes sense and all that, with how Rei made a mistake, and how, he made a mistake with one piece and it cost him the entire match. It was kind of like the Master Shogi confirming that. That's all he needed to say, and he was able to understand what Rei was thinking in that moment. So I like that. I like what was being implied here, but I could be wrong. Maybe he doesn't have a hearing issue. Maybe he just believes he's on a higher status. He just doesn't care about talking to other people. But whatever it may be, though, this episode did ground him down a little bit more compared to what he was previously. Now, speaking about what I said earlier, actions speak louder than words. I should have probably already dived into that. The scene with Rei fighting, Soya, and Soya and him having their match, we all knew, before the match even started, we all knew that Rei wasn't going to win. We all knew that. Anyone that thought Rei had a chance was deceiving themselves. It's just common sense. And we didn't need to know that he lost before he said he lost. The communication or the body language and all that was very different, but we knew that Rei was going to lose. And I felt like that scene was a very powerful moment for Rei, because it allows him to go through an awakening to realize that he has a goal that he can strive to be like. He can try to reach up into, the level where Soya's at and try to be like that. And so I feel like this is him finding his motive to continue doing shogi. For someone like Soya, doesn't have to be isolated on top. And that's also another thing that goes along with Soya too. Being number one can be a very lonely existence, because once you reach the summit, you reach the top of the mountain, and you look down, there's no up. There's nothing. There's nothing to grab onto. There's nothing to pull yourself up higher. When you're at the top, you're at the top. There's just no more. And many times, with us, how we are as human beings, when we don't have an objective, when we don't have a goal, we feel empty inside. And that could also be what's going on with Soya. He could be very empty inside because he doesn't have anything. He doesn't have anything he can strive to be better at, because he's already the master of shogi, and so he doesn't have anything to strive for to continue on improving, because he's already at the top. And I feel like that's also showcasing how isolated you are when you are on top of the mountain. Nobody stands up there with you. You're all by yourself. And I feel like that's the theme also that can be put along with this episode. So, yeah. Overall, March comes in like a lion. This episode, fantastic. Straight fantastic. You know what? No. Phenomenal. A phenomenal episode because of what it did for Soya's character. I'm very, very hyped up to see what happens next, how Rei interacts with Soya. Maybe they might become good friends. I don't know. But I do believe next week we'll probably get some clarification to how, Soya is, or who he is. For instance, with his hearing issue or not hearing issue, I do believe we'll probably get it clarified in next week's episode. So with that, I want to end this video here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to, get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below next to the subscribe button. So with that, please be safe, stay healthy, stay warm. Chibi out.